Hello and welcome to the PowerTest 24 conference hosted by NETA. I'm Ellen Parson, the Editor-in-Chief of EC&M, and I'm here today in Dallas for a two-day event to learn everything I can about electrical power safety and reliability from the leading subject matter experts in the field. And one of those subject matter experts who's kind enough to sit down with me today is Lanny Floyd. He's a professional engineer, an electrical safety, accident, and injury expert, and life fellow of IEEE, who works with the University of Alabama at Birmingham and is also retired from DuPont. Lanny, thanks so much for taking time out today to talk with me and to break down the key takeaways from your presentation.
Thank you, Ellen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, well, let's just start with, the title was really compelling to me. The title of the session was When Compliance Isn't Good Enough. So, to me, compliance, obviously that means you're complying, so you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But in that title, it suggests that, maybe that isn't enough. And as you stated in the presentation, most people believe that simply complying with regulations and standards will enable the safety outcome that they're desiring. But that isn't definitely the case in every situation. So why do you think that mindset continues to be an issue today?
Well, compliance is really important. The regulations and standards such as NFPA 70E and 70B and the National Electrical Code have been written based on a tremendous amount of knowledge from very dedicated and passionate people over the, for the NEC over the past 100+ years. Lesser time than for 70E and OSHA. They date back to the 1970 time frame. But if you talk to anyone who's really expert, has been involved in developing those, they will say they're the minimum requirements. They are the things that everyone needs to do, but they can't anticipate every nuance that exists in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So that's why in my 50-year career, I've seen so many examples where people thought they were doing the right thing, they were committed to being in compliance with the regulations and standards, but something happened and an exposure to the hazard, to the electrical hazard happened, and a bad outcome came about. And so that's why I say that sometimes, not all the time, but many times, compliance goes a long ways toward preventing injury, but usually there's more you can do. That usually pops up after a bad accident happens and there's investigation and people say, oh, we don't want this to ever happen again.
Right.
And so usually there's something that's identified, usually more than one thing, that could have been done or should be done going forward. Mm-hmm. And if we can do that in advance, then we can. Definitely,
and not to get overconfident and think that something could not happen, because it always can. Well, let's jump to the accident stats that you spoke of. Can you give us an idea of how the injuries and fatalities have changed over the decades? Obviously, there's been some significant improvements.
Going back to the early 1980s, there were about 800 fatalities a year in the workplace and about that same number in home environments. So close to 2,000 fatalities a year. And I suspect if you go back earlier in time, that number would have increased. But certainly we have good data since 1980 that shows there's been a steady downward trend over the years. Some of the changes that impacted is whether we're in a recession or not. If you're in a recession, there's less work going on. But the trend has been downward except for the last 12 or so years. It's sort of been flat. And that's not unique to electrical fatalities. That's a common phenomena with, if you look at all the OSHA fatalities, recordable fatalities.
Right, and those always tend to be the same areas, right?
Yeah, and so what's caused that? What's caused that downward trend? A lot of people focus on, the OSHA and the industry standards at 70E, that's made a big difference. Well, I agree that they may have made a difference, but I think there's some other things that have contributed to that. 100 years ago, most of the switchgear was live front. In other words, there were exposed, energized parts on the front of the gear. The concept of putting all those energized parts inside a steel box hadn't really come about yet.
Sure.
And so there was a lot of exposure, and that equipment that was installed in the early part of the 20th century, it took decades before it to be replaced
Okay.
with more modern equipment. The other thing that is probably the most significant thing that's ever happened in electrical safety was the ground fault circuit interrupter. That is all but eliminated the electrocutions from consumer products. We're not at zero yet, we've still got ways to go. But if you look at the data over the last, since 1970, when the GFCI was first required by the National Electrical Code on new installations, and I think it was just in one location, maybe it was either bathrooms or the kitchen at that time. The increasing installation of GFCIs over the past 50 years has had a dramatic impact. There's been other things too. The double insulated tools has contributed to it, and the third wire equipment ground that was first required around the 1960 has also had a tremendous impact on preventing electrocutions.
Thank you for that background. That was a great summary. There was a phrase you used in the presentation that made me want to ask you about. You also mentioned low frequency can create an illusion of control. So can you explain what that means and kind of put it into perspective in the electrical field?
Yes, electrical fatalities and injuries, although we're very concerned about it, that's why I'm here at this conference, that's why I do the work I've done, actually are relatively rare. Electrical, in the year 2019, I think electrical injuries, or I'm sorry, electrical fatalities were, I'm sorry, I was right the first time. Electrical injuries, the recordable lost time injuries, was less than 0.2% of all OSHA recordables. That's a very small percentage. However, the other side of that coin is electrical injuries are very deadly. 1 in 13, based on ESFI and NIOSH data, show that 1 in 13 is fatal, which makes it one of the most severe hazards in the workplace as far as the potential for an injury to be fatal. And so because they're low frequency, they don't happen very often, and an organization or an individual, whether it's a manager or a worker, can think, oh, we must be doing everything right. We haven't had an electrical injury for a long time. It may be more due to the inherent low frequency nature of electrical injuries rather than due to the quality of the electrical safety program. So that illusion of control means we must be good. But that may not be true. We have an accident waiting to happen. And so I think that's something to be aware of and to be diligent about.
Definitely good point. That kind of ties in with something else you mentioned. I think we're going to be wrapping up after this one, is what are some of the hidden risks that often crop up when you're, let's say, investigating electrical accidents or incidents?
When you isolate a circuit and lock it out, tag it out, create an electrically safe work condition, that is a tremendous reduction of risk. But there's usually always some residual risk still there. That electrical energy may still exist on the line side of a switch, or behind a cover, or behind a shutter and draw out switch gear. And so you have to ask the question, are we aware of that hazard is still there? And what is in place to prevent a person from coming in contact with that? And are the workers aware of what they need to do? For example, don't open that door, don't take off that cover, don't lift that shutter, whatever.
Or a false sense of security type situation.
So it's a constant vigilance and always being aware that electricity is all around us. You know, our modern society, we often take it for granted, except when the lights go out, and we don't have the luxury of the things that we enjoy.
Definitely. Well, that's definitely great advice, and actually I think a nice place to wrap up the conversation.
Well, thank you, Ellen. Again, it's been a pleasure being here and being at this conference, and seeing people excited about pushing the envelope in electrical safety.
Definitely learning a lot too. So I'm Ellen Parson, reporting from PowerTest 24 in Dallas. Thank you and have a great day.